Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. More delays in the prosecution of so-called Doomsday cult mom, Vallow Daybell. We break down the charges and allegations.
It's clear that we're all just making our best guesses as to when we can start having jury trials again.
One of America's most prolific serial killers has died. The cases Samuel Little admitted to, and the ones still unsolved.
Putting his hands around a woman's throat and choking her out, to him, that was sex.
Plus, why the IRS is taking the estate of Prince to court. And prosecutors want to keep undercover video of New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft. How his defense is trying to get evidence of the supposed sex act destroyed. Law and Crime Daily, along with Terri Austin. A trial date for the so-called Doomsday cult mom has been pushed back.
You know, Brian, this isn't for the top charges against Vallow Daybell. She's facing two separate cases in connection with the deaths of her two children, yet none of the charges are for murder. Vallow and her husband, Chad Daybell, are charged with concealing and destroying evidence while Vallow's children were reported missing. Authorities discovered the bodies of JJ and Tylee Ryan buried in shallow graves on Daybell's property in Fremont County, Idaho. Police arrested the couple in Hawaii last year. Vallow is also facing 3 misdemeanor charges of obstruction, solicitation, and contempt in her hometown of Madison County. They stem from allegations for lying about JJ's whereabouts, like apparently asking her best friend to cover when police asked to see the 7-year-old boy. This trial is now expected to take place after the couple's first trial this summer.
I received on December 8th a motion and stipulation to vacate the trial setting in this matter from Mr. Means and Mr. Wood. That was closely followed by the Supreme Court order of December 14th prohibiting any jury trials from occurring until further order. So that essentially also vacated our January trial setting date. And then this morning, Mr. Means, I received from you a waiver of speedy trial with your client's signature. And then I see that the felony jury trial for Ms. Vallow is currently set for July 12th to continue through August 6th.
The week-long misdemeanor trial is now scheduled to begin on August 30th, just weeks after the felony trial.
You can see there's a lot of scheduling there. Thanks, Terri. And this is just for Vallow, right?
Yeah, that's right, Brian. The August 30th trial is just in connection with the misdemeanor charges against Lori, the obstruction, solicitation, contempt charges. Those were levied against her because, first of all, she lied about JJ's whereabouts, and then she asked Melanie Gibb to lie, and she failed to produce her children. So, yes, this is just in connection with Vallow.
Gotcha. And to be clear, this will be about what happened before the bodies of the children were discovered. Joining us now is Professor and Forensic Death Investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. Joseph, always a pleasure to have you here. Joseph,
good to be here with you, Brian.
Thanks. And Joseph, do we know yet how these children died based on all the facts so far?
Facts are, let's say the cause of death has not been specifically named. I have a few ideas, but I want to talk about another timeline. We had mentioned this court trial, and I've seen a lot of chatter on social media about how long this is going to take and this sort of thing. But let's talk about the timeline as it applies to the crime itself. When you begin to break this down and you think about the idea that they impeded the investigation, they hampered the investigation, they maybe covered up evidence or destroyed evidence. This is key in forensics, Brian. This is the underpinning of what we do. Because as I teach my students at Jacksonville State, crime investigation, forensic investigation works in linear time. So the further you move down the track relative to that event, that horrible homicides, we're assuming that this is homicides that have taken place, the more evidence begins to be lost, obscured, destroyed, all these sorts of things. And that's why this is such a critical charge in this case. Think about how long it was before these bodies were actually discovered. We're talking about changes in the soil, the environment, and not to mention the bodies themselves. These bodies are severely decomposed. Not to mention, we have picked up on evidence that there was an attempt to destroy Kaylee's body in particular by fire. So this is going to compromise the integrity of the evidence. So this is big news. This is something that we need to watch very carefully because all kinds of things have been lost along the way. And I can tell you that's why prosecutors are after her for this.
Let's hope not too much has been lost, JSM. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Attorneys for two of the shooting victims during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, are filing negligence claims. The claims filed on behalf of two men, one who survived and one who was murdered, says the city and the county were negligent in their response to the unrest. Protesters took to the streets this summer over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Then, 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse is accused of shooting 3 people and is facing 5 felony charges. Rittenhouse is expected in court for his arraignments on Tuesday. Lawyers for 2 of the men charged with shooting an unarmed jogger in Georgia don't want him to be called a victim in their trial. Gregory and Travis McMichael are accused of murdering 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery in February. Attorneys for the McMichaels say using the term victim, quote, allows the focus to shift to the accused rather than remain on the proof of every element of the crimes charged. Former homicide prosecutor and Law&Crime legal analyst Bernardo Villalona says there's a middle ground for how to refer to Arbery.
The defendant is entitled to a fair trial. So in order for there to be a fair trial in this case, I believe it is right for Ahmaud Arbery to be referred to not as the victim, but more of let's refer to him as the deceased. We're talking about a person that was killed. We are talking about the defense saying that they killed Ahmaud Arbery in self-defense. So that being the case, the labelization of the term victim is hence already making the decision for the jury when the jury is supposed to be the fact finder and to determine who was the actual victim in this case. And again, you know, I'm putting emotions aside when I say this because I truly believe Ahmaud Arbery was a victim in this case. However, in a court of law, he should be referred to as a deceased.
I would gently disagree. He is a victim. The only question is whether or not it's self-defense, but we'll continue with that later. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, how the death of a serial killer impacts justice for his victims. And later, how prosecutors rush to hold on to video in the Robert Kraft case, why the now closed sex crimes case against the New England Patriots. One of America's most prolific serial killers has passed away. Law and Crime Daily's Angenette Levy spoke with a prosecutor who interviewed Little about 2 murders he committed in Ohio.
Yeah, Brian, the FBI says Samuel Little actually murdered 93 people, mostly women, in 19 states from 1970 until 2005. Now, Little was actually arrested over the years for other crimes, but he was never caught for murder because he said he left town after killing a woman and then dumping her body. Little maintained his innocence until after his conviction in California, and a Texas Ranger interviewed him in prison. That Ranger, James Holland, got Little to admit to murdering 93 people, always by strangling. Holland got Little to also sketch his victims, many of whom were prostitutes, in the hope of identifying them. Little could recall a lot of details about the women he killed.
She's a black male dressed up as a female. Okay. How tall is she?
Marianne's about 5'7", 5'6". She weighed about 135.
Okay.
Maybe 140.
And how old do you think she was?
But she was 19.
Okay. And where was she from?
No, Miami, down in Liberty City.
Now, Little also confessed to killing 2 women from the Cincinnati, Ohio area. One of those women was identified. The other has never been found. Her remains are still out there somewhere, and police have yet to identify her. Prosecutors and police are working to do that. And I actually spoke with one of the prosecutors who interviewed Little in prison about what motivated him.
This was his life, number one. One thing about Samuel Little, too, I've tried a number of serial killers, and most of them just like ooze evil. That's just the only way to describe them. And Sam Little was not like that. He was very, it sounds funny saying this about him, but he was personable, he was congenial, he would kid around. He said, "Do you think it's wrong for a man to have sexual intercourse with a woman?" I said, "No." He goes, "Well, to me, putting my hands around a woman's throat and choking her, that was my form of sex. There's all kinds of different sex. To me, that was sex." And it's like, you know, dude, you're weird, but that's the way he looked at it. The rest of it meant nothing to him. You could have a supermodel in the back seat with him naked, and it would do nothing for him until he started choking her out. And then that's when he got aroused.
A renowned forensic death investigator and Jacksonville State University professor Joseph Scott Morgan joins us. He's been following the case. And Joseph, there have been 50 of these confessions that have been verified by law enforcement. That leaves about 43 homicides unsolved to date. You know, they say Little was very good with details, but there are some other details that are sketchy with him because of the sheer number and volume of these murders. So, what chance do you see in the rest of these murders being solved?
I got to tell you, one of the fascinating things about Samuel Little's case is that we have DNA evidence from him. And moving, when I think back to things like Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole, who were a pair that traveled all over the country, had a lot of freedom, and they worked in tandem. They lied about a lot of the cases, but they did commit a lot of cases. We don't have that much DNA, but for him, we have a source material for him, particularly if he's engaging in fantasy activities with the body, and they were able to collect that at the time. This is a living person now that we have this attached to. So as the database increases and it improves, and I'm thinking primarily through things like familial DNA, we might have a better chance of solving some of these open cases and confirming some of the things that he has said along the way. Let's think about what this ranger has accomplished. It's mind-blowing. And I agree with the prosecutor. He's almost affable when you listen to him talk. I listened to several minutes of the interviews, and he goes into fine detail about clothing, hair color. He kept using a term which I found fascinating when he was talking about the tone of skin. He said, "Yeah, that girl was honey colored," and he used that term over and over again. And it's striking because a lot of these guys have these very vivid fantasy lives in their mind, and he's living this over and over. Even cases that happened all the way back in the early 70s, it's still happening. It was still happening in real time as he was talking to this ranger.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen that in this case. And hopefully there will be some justice provided to the victims
I hope
and
so.
their families. Joseph Scott Morgan, thanks again so much for talking with us about this. Brian, we're going to send it back to you.
Thanks, Angenette, as well as Joseph Scott Morgan. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, why a teen convicted of posing as a fake doctor is back behind bars. Plus, the dramatic body cam video of police rescuing a girl from drowning in freezing water. The video you don't want to miss. Next. The search for a missing 3-year-old boy is continuing as his mother's boyfriend remains in custody on charges in connection with her murder. Desean Brown waived his arraignment for murder, gross abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. Prosecutors say he killed Natisha Lattimore in early December and dumped her body near a bridge. Her son, Nilo, has been missing ever since, and police say foul play is suspected. The search and rescue team are still out looking for him and report finding his stroller and a bag with possible blood on it.
In addition to our normal ground units and canine units, we brought in mounted units as well to help cover the territory. Some of this terrain is pretty dense and difficult, and the horses can maybe make a pathway. Plus they have an advantage, they're up higher. So it's just an additional tool.
A federal judge has ruled that the execution of a female inmate can proceed. Lisa Montgomery was set to be executed last month, but that was delayed because her lawyers contracted COVID-19. Montgomery was convicted of using a kitchen knife to cut out an 8-month-old fetus out of a woman's womb to try to raise it as her own. The victim was found dead in a pool of blood. The baby survived and was returned to its father. Her execution is now scheduled for January 12th, and she'll be the first female inmate executed in 70 years. Law and Crime host Bob Bianchi explains possible issues in the appeals court ruling.
I've had a big problem with this as a person who has tried death penalty cases and handled them as a prosecutor. I am not an advocate of it any longer, only because I've seen the system sometimes being so wildly inconsistent. And here, by my calculations, 8 days 8 days could be the difference between whether somebody is executed or not. Now, I understand that our audience is going to say she should burn in hell for everything and I understand that sentiment. What I don't like is the arbitrariness of this. The lawyers argued that the clemency petition is a vital, important part of the criminal justice process, and they should have the ability to file it and potentially file appeals of something of some nature, which would push it over that arbitrary line of January 20th. It's literally the difference between life or death.
Dramatic police body cam video captured the moments officers rescued a 6-year-old girl after her mother allegedly attempted to drown her.
Look. Someone get a car and take the kid to the hospital. Hey, compressions are hurt. Oh my God. Okay. Stay back. Stay back. Oh my God. Depression. I got you. Come on. I got a car. I got you. Right now. Right here in the water. Start breathing for the baby. Come on.
Baltimore police say the mother was having a mental health crisis and was trying to kill herself and her daughter. Officers jumped into the freezing Inner Harbor water to pull both of them out. The 6-year-old was unconscious and unresponsive. She was rushed to the hospital and doctors were able to save her life. Both mother and daughter are recovering. When we come back, was the estate of Prince undervalued by half its worth? We look into new allegations by the IRS filed in court after the break. The fake teen doctor known as Dr. Love has been arrested for fraud again. Malachi Love Robinson pled guilty in 2018 to setting up a fraudulent holistic medical practice and scamming an elderly woman out of $20,000 when he was just 18 years old. It seems like he's back to his old tricks. Investigators say that since his release from prison, Love Robinson has been working as a shipping broker and apparently had clients send money to his personal account instead of the company. Police say he took over $10,000 and texted the owner of the company that he, quote, effed up. The legal battle over the estate of legendary performer and musician Prince is continuing with new claims from the IRS. According to court documents, the IRS believes Prince's estate is worth $160 million. That's more than double the valuation by the estate's administrator, Comerica Bank and Trust. Prince died in 2016 from a fentanyl overdose and did not have a will. The discrepancy is mostly over the value of Prince's music publishing and recording interests. The IRS believes Prince's estate owes more than $30 million in federal taxes, about double its current bill. Terry, Comerica has asked the tax court to hold a trial to resolve the issue. How do you see that playing out?
You know what? First of all, Brian, I say please let Prince rest in peace. Having said that, I'm not surprised the IRS wants to assert that the estate is worth more so they can tax more. But I think battling this out in court is not the answer. It's a waste of the assets of the estate, and the parties should really submit their expert valuations to an impartial mediator who can equitably split the difference. So that's what I think should happen in this case.
It does sound like a better plan, Terry. And now to Florida, where a prosecutor is asking a judge to preserve video that allegedly shows New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft paying for a sex act. Kraft faced charges after secret police surveillance cameras at a massage parlor allegedly caught men paying for prostitution. But both a trial judge and an appeals judge ruled the sting operation violated legitimate patrons' rights to privacy. The video was suppressed, and now Kraft's defense team wants it destroyed altogether. Palm Beach County prosecutor Dave Ehrenberg says he was forced to drop the charges in September because the video couldn't come in as evidence.
The Jupiter Police Department did the right thing in pursuing the investigation, and I stand behind the decision to file the cases. The Orchids of Asia Day Spa was a notorious brothel in a family shopping center right next to a game room that attracted children. Rich guys from a local country club lined up to receive sex acts throughout the day until the place closed around midnight. Although we could not prove human trafficking beyond a reasonable doubt, there was evidence of human trafficking in the overall investigation.
Terry, the prosecutor says he has no interest in preserving the video, but there's still a pending lawsuit where it might come into evidence. How do you think that court will rule?
Well, you know, Brian, that's right. There's a separate class action under 42 U.S.C. 1983, and that was filed by some unnamed individuals. And it gives them the right to sue a state employee under the color of state law for civil rights violations. And I actually think that the case is going to prevail as far as the state attorney is concerned, because I don't think that they are going to allow this evidence to be destroyed.
So you're basically saying that this video may, at some point in time in a different case, see the light of day?
That's right, Brian. They cannot actually, under state law, destroy evidence when there could be a potential lawsuit. And here we know for a fact that there is a pending lawsuit. So I don't think that the judge is going to say destroy the evidence. I think the judge is duty bound, as are the parties, to preserve the evidence for this potential trial, which is actually a pending case.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, of course, you can't turn back the dials to get that video afterwards. It could be good for the case, but I don't know if seeing that video is going to be good for the rest of us. Terry, thanks for joining us. And, of course, thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.